This week, Pope Francis tells us what he's going to do during his papacy, and the world reacts. This and more coming up. Hello and welcome to Vatican Connections. Today we're going to take a look at the document that has made people sit up and take notice. Last Sunday, Pope Francis celebrated Mass at St. Peter's to close off the Year of Faith. After that Mass, he gave a small group of people a copy of his first Apostolic Exhortation, which is called, in English, The Joy of the Gospel.
At the conclusion of the Year of Faith, the Holy Father will now officially hand over to a representation of faithful a copy of the Apostolic Exhortation, Evangelii Gaudium.
Now then, on Tuesday, that document was released to the public, and the reaction is unlike any we've seen in recent history over a papal document. Catholic News Service has more on what exactly is in this exhortation.
In his first extensive piece of writing as Pope, Pope Francis lays out a vision of the Catholic Church dedicated to evangelization in a positive key, with a focus on society's poorest and most vulnerable, including the elderly and the unborn. The Joy of the Gospel, released November 26th, emphasizes some of Pope Francis's signature themes, including the dangers of economic globalization and spiritual worldliness. The Church's message, the Pope writes, has to concentrate on the essentials, on what is most beautiful, most grand, most appealing, and at the same time, most necessary. With the essentials, what shines forth is the beauty of the saving love of God made manifest in Jesus Christ, who died and rose from the dead. Inspired by Jesus' poverty and concern for the impoverished, Pope Francis calls for a church which is poor and for the poor. The poor have much to teach us, he writes. We're called to find Christ in them, to lend our voices to their causes, but also to be their friends, to listen to them, to speak for them, and to embrace the mysterious wisdom which God wishes to share with us through them. Pope Francis reiterates his earlier criticisms of an idolatry of money and other ideologies that defend the absolute autonomy of the marketplace and financial speculation, which he blames for the current financial crisis. He emphasizes that the Church's concern for the vulnerable extends to unborn children, the most defenseless and innocent among us. He says their defense is closely linked to the defense of each and every other human right. A human being is always sacred in any situation and at every stage of development, the Pope writes. Once this conviction disappears, so do solid and lasting foundations for the defense of human rights. The Pope ends by invoking Mary as the mother of evangelization and the wellspring of happiness for God's little ones.
Now, one of the major themes was inequality, poverty, and how that results in violence. So it's quite timely then that this week the Vatican's charity arm, Cor Unum, announced a new project to serve Syrian refugees in Lebanon who are currently without health care. Cor Unum is partnering with Caritas Lebanon and the Papal Pediatric Hospital Bambino Gesù. Cardinal Robert Serra, the head of Cor Unum, said the organization will work in the Bekaa region of Lebanon to provide screening and medication for children. Father Simon Fadul of Caritas Lebanon said this initiative will reach both children who are refugees and children already living in the region, and he said this is a group that has not yet been reached by humanitarian organizations working in the region. A new book being released in Italy tells the story behind Pope John Paul II's historic visit to Rome's synagogue. It turns out the whole thing came to pass thanks to a local shopkeeper who was called on to act as a go-between for Pope John Paul II and Rabbi Elio Toath. In his book, David Limentani recounts how he was summoned to the Vatican to meet John Paul II, thinking it was a joke. Now, even though he's just a simple shopkeeper, Limentani's family is well known in the Jewish community, so he had credibility. But he wasn't so high profile that if the rabbi did not agree to the visit, there would be public diplomatic embarrassment. Finally, Pope Francis made one notable appointment this week. He has named his personal secretary, Monsignor Alfred Zwerab, to be his representative on the Commission of Reference for the Institute of Works of Religion, better known as the Vatican Bank. Pope Francis created this commission earlier this year to study how the bank works. The commission is not permanent, and it will cease to exist once it has submitted a final report to the Pope along with all the material it has gathered. Now, one of the key words in the Pope's exhortation is missionary or mission. Now, this week, the 4th Missionary Congress of the Americas is taking place in Maracaibo, Venezuela, and Deacon Pedro Guevara Mann is in Maracaibo. He spoke to Cardinal Fernando Filoni, who is the head of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples. Among other things, they spoke about what it means to be a missionary today and the current situation for Catholics in China.
In this moment, we are, I can say, in a standby. Why? After 5 years, when Pope Benedict sent a letter to the Catholic in China, we were awaiting an answer to this letter. And just 1 year ago, I wrote an article in Hong Kong Tripod, which is a review of the Diocese of Hong Kong, in which I explain, after 5 years of the letter of Pope Benedict, we are still waiting for an answer. Why? And I explain why. We had quite big problems in these 5 years, especially because of the appointment of some illegitimate bishops. And this is something hurting a lot the whole church in the world, and the Chinese church too. Can we sit together and find better solution for the sake of the whole church, of China, of the church in China? China is not just a country like in the past considered a side. Today is a vital part of the whole world. Why not for the Catholics in the church? We ask every time to Chinese bishops, priests, and Catholics, you must be loyal to your country, you must be faithful to the faith. There is no antagonism between the two aspects. Each Chinese is linked and loves its country. we have to respect, we have to consider. But the good Chinese also, they like very much their faith, for which they suffer, and still they want to be linked. If we sit, dialogue can solve a lot of problems. So we are waiting. Pope Francis manifested goodwill. I think the president now, elected a few months ago, is also keen for something new. So we wait and we hope a spring will come also there.
You mentioned earlier that you're responsible for 100,000 dioceses or so around the world. Traditionally, we think about mission territory, like the north of Canada, but has that word, that expression, mission territory today, do you think it has changed? Do we mean something different today when we talk about mission territory?
This expression is a very old expression, and you know, years after years are changing many things. Perhaps it will come out when these young churches and this territory will receive fully the gospel. Also, missionary territories will change. But the question is not just linking missionary activity to the territory. Do you think that in Italy, in Germany, in the United States, in Canada, we don't need a mission? So the question is not a mission, just to think about the territory. Thinking about the territory, we are thinking about territories where the gospel arrived not so long ago, like, for instance, Europe. And it is interesting that the Pope, every time is Pope Francis speaking about, we must be missionary, make missionary activity, because the church exists because of missionary activity, not to the contrary. So the church is linked to the announcement of the gospel, and I think every time we have to announce the gospel, we are doing missionary activity. So the question of word could be changed, but the substance is still the same.
Time to take a look now through the Pope's Daytimer to see what he's been doing and who he's been meeting this week. On Monday, a much-anticipated meeting took place. Russian President Vladimir Putin visited the Pope in the afternoon. He arrived about 45 minutes late because his flight was delayed. They met privately for 35 minutes. Now, by Vatican standards, that is a significant meeting. They spoke about the civil war in Syria, and President Putin is said to have thanked Pope Francis for the letter he sent just before the start of the G20 summit. Also on Monday, Pope Francis met with a group of union leaders from Argentina. He asked them again to work towards creating a culture of encounter. Wednesday was the general audience. Pope Francis finished a series of catecheses on the Creed. He dealt with the issue of the resurrection of the body and death. He said, if death is understood as an end, then yes, it frightens us. But the human heart has a desire for the infinite and rebels against this idea of death as an end. If we live united with Christ, we see death as a passage and face it with serenity and hope. When we remember this, we understand Jesus' invitation to always be ready and watchful. And on Saturday, the Pope was scheduled to celebrate Vespers with the university students of Rome to mark the official start of Advent. This week, we're switching things up a little bit. Normally, this is where we answer your questions about all things Vatican, but this week, we asked you, what do you think about this exhortation? Well, John J. posted on Facebook, and he says the thing that struck him the most is the use of the word sourpusses. He said it almost paraphrases St. Therese of Avila. And that's true. Pope Francis, again in this exhortation, warns against becoming rigid and fixated on single issues or dogma and becoming sourpusses instead of being filled with the joy and being capable of transmitting Christ's love. Now, Joe Sales tweeted, it helps us to better understand what we must do as Catholic Christians, whether we're priests, religious, or laity. So if you do get a chance to read this exhortation, you will notice, like Joe did, that there is a section in this exhortation for everyone. There's something for priests, for lay people, youth ministers, women, and many, many more. Now, there was also reaction from different parts of the world in the media. The Guardian out of the UK, the Guardian's finance and economy editor, Heidi Moore, wrote a column saying Pope Francis understands the economy better than most politicians. She pointed out that in the 3 years after the economic crisis, people in the top 1% economically saw their wages grow about 30%, while everyone else saw their wages grow only 0.4%. So Pope Francis's statement that the current system places profits before all else, even people, needs to be refocused is spot on. Vatican Connections is interactive. Send us your questions or comments by Facebook, Twitter, email, or post. Via email, send comments to info@saltandlighttv.org. And by post, send letters to 114 Richmond Street East, Toronto, Ontario, M5C 1P1, Canada. Well, that's it for Vatican Connections. Now, remember, you can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter @VatiConnections. And we would love to hear what you think of this exhortation once you read it, or what you think might happen at next week's Council of Cardinals. Join us again next time, or we'll bring you more on that Council of Cardinals meeting. From everyone here, thanks for watching.